All right, hear me out. What if the reason your life isn't changing isn't because you don't have enough of the right opportunities coming in, but maybe the opportunities are showing up and your mindset is actually trained to see the problem before you see the possibilities. And if you think about how often you do this, you might say something along the lines like, I want more money, but you're constantly talking about how you can't afford things and feeling a victim to maybe society and the way that the economy is. Maybe you want a better life and you're just constantly talking about everything that is going wrong in this exact moment. Or it could be around your relationship and you're wanting a healthy relationship, but you're consistently looking for evidence that you're going to be disappointed or hurt again. And we pray and we ask the universe and we ask God to change things. But the moment things change, we think differently and we make different choices or we step outside of our comfort zone, but there's still a resistance that you're facing in that space. And then we're right back to feeling like nothing is actually changing. But really, the question isn't why isn't my life changing? It's what am I doing with what God has already placed in front of me? Because an abundant life begins with an abundant mindset. And that is what we're going to talk about today. Hello, everyone. I am Kanisha. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Faith, and Divine Union. This is one of my favorite topics is mindset, but I am also a certified twin flame ascension coach. I am in union with my true twin flame, and we talk about healing, spiritual journey, self-limiting beliefs, and God, because y'all know I love God, and really becoming the best version of yourself and how to receive. So sorry about that. How to receive your divine love, abundance, and all of your true desires that you want in your life. And even though we talk a lot about twin flames on this channel, one of the things I really understood quite early in my twin flame journey was that this was really about me. The journey is about you and getting to know yourself and really being able to have a deep connection with your consciousness. And when you can pursue a relationship with yourself and with God, so many beautiful things unfold. So today's conversation is really about mindset and abundance. And I want you to really just kind of take in what I'm going to say here because it can feel like a lot, especially if you've been vibrating in lack consciousness or victim mentality. And I have a lot of compassion because I was there at one point, and I'll get into that a little later in this video. But it's not normally something that we hear or talk about, which is being in victim consciousness, being in this victim mentality that life is happening to me and everything is going wrong and nothing's working out for me. This is something I'm hearing a lot within my clients the last few weeks. So I really felt that it was important that I touched on this. And I want to also help you see how this shows up in every area. It could be love, it could be money, it could be your job, it could be your family. And especially when you get into those places when maybe money is tight or something isn't working, maybe you're feeling really frustrated and you're waiting for something to change. But when you're looking at the circumstances, you're thinking, God, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, what am I supposed to create from what you're giving me here? I've had those moments too. And I know that through this video, I am going to share some of my own experience and how I shifted my mindset to be able to pretty much create a life that I love waking up to every day. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to touch on was this story that I heard just a few days ago, and it really helped me think differently and it helped me reflect on how my childhood was. And there was this mother who was asked what she did differently when raising her kids because all of her kids are millionaires. And her answer was surprisingly simple. And she said that when her children were young, she decided that she wasn't going to allow complaining to become a habit in their home. And I was just like, okay, that makes so much sense. And when I first heard this, it sounded a bit harsh because it's like, well, they should be able to like express how they're feeling. And if that's complaining, that's okay. But in truth, when I read more into this, I was like, no, this woman knew exactly what she was doing. And that is because, children complain, adults complain. We all have our moments of frustration. We're tired, we're disappointed, we're overwhelmed, and we're really just maybe having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, maybe even a bad year. And what she was really teaching them wasn't that they weren't allowed to have feelings. She was teaching them that it's important not to become powerless inside those feelings. And that's why I find the mirror exercise that I teach here on my channel is so crucial on your journey, whether or not you're on the twin flame journey. You're like, I don't want my twin flame Kanisha. I just want to like become the best version of myself. I mean, you're still in the right place, okay? But you want to be able to still process those feelings. And whenever one of her children became upset or in the space of wanting to complain about something, instead of immediately fixing it for them or joining them in their upset and how terrible the situation is, she would ask them a simple question. And she asked them, what are you going to do about it? And for me, I was like, wow, like I've had those moments where, like, what am I going to do about this? Because imagine learning as a 7-year-old. So this is how old she started doing this with her children, was 7. It was every time life doesn't go your way, instead of immediately believing life is against you or God is against you, you learn to look for the next move. And the more that I thought about that story, the more I realized that this is absolutely, it has nothing to do with just raising your children. This is about how we live our lives as adults too. And I think that you would have really emotionally stable children who find solutions instead of looking to someone else to fix something. If we could teach them just that one simple rule. And I'm including myself in that. There really has to be absolutely many seasons in my life when I think about it that I could tell you everything wasn't working. There was many days, especially in my early 20s, somewhere between like 22 and like 27. It was like a 5-year like gap of just shit. Okay. And everything just was not unfolding in the way I thought it was going to. And I was moving through just really deep depression. I was also moving through, at the time, a really unhealthy relationship with my karmic partner, who I ended up marrying for a short period of time. And then we went through an annulment process. And then I went through learning how to be a single mom. And in those years, that was some of the toughest things I've had to move through. And I remember thinking, especially when I became a single mom and I didn't have a job, and I had 2 young children at the age of like a year and a half and 3.5, almost 4. And I'm trying to figure out how to move through this. And very soon after that, COVID hit. Like so many things unfolded to where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to survive the next day. And there was a period of time moving through a heartbreak after my karmic relationship where I was only getting out of bed to feed my children. And I would just remember thinking like, how the hell did I get here? Why is my life like this? And ultimately, I was living in victimhood energy. I was living in my own personal hell. And looking back, I can see something now that I couldn't always see while I was in it. And I thought I was describing my circumstances, but sometimes I actually was just reinforcing them. And every day I was telling myself the same freaking story, guys. And then eventually, the story that you tell yourself repeatedly really just becomes your entire life and your reality. You hear me say this a lot on this channel. Your reality is a direct reflection of your inner reality. And whatever is going on in here has to reflect out here. So think about this. Sometimes we have situations that really feel like they're just bogging us down. You feel like you're hitting rock bottom. It could be money, and maybe you don't have enough and you can't pay your rent, or your business isn't growing, or you're just unhappy at work or in your relationship. Maybe your twin flame journey just seems not to be moving. You're like, I'm doing all this healing and nothing's freaking budging. But when you create a story around the circumstance, you're literally saying, see, nothing ever works out for me. I hear this a lot within my clients. Like, it's not working out for me. And I can never get ahead, or people always leave, or I'm never supported. And this is just my reality. And I can't change it because there are things out here that are in control and have power. And once we start telling ourselves that story, we literally begin looking for evidence to tell us that it is true. And that's really what got me about the story about the mother, was that she wasn't necessarily changing her children's circumstances. If school was too difficult, it was too difficult. If they were having a hard time with friends, and that's the truth, they're having some issues with friends. If there was something disappointing happening within their life, like, it still happened. And she wasn't changing the circumstance. She was just changing how they responded to it. And you'll start to see yourself doing the same thing. Instead of saying life is unfair, it can become like, okay, well, what can I do about this where it feels unfair? Because the only thing you really can change and shift is how you feel within. If someone's treating you like shit, you can give them power, your power, and allow them to affect you. Or you can be like, you know what? I'm putting a boundary here. You don't get to make me feel this way. I'm not going to give you that power. I'm going to say no to your BS, and I'm going to go a different direction. And I'm going to choose to feel a certain way because I can choose that. I have power to choose what I want to choose to feel. And that shift is the foundation of an abundant mindset. I also want to focus on how abundance isn't about pretending that everything is perfect, because that is a whole another level of denial, and we don't need to be in denial, okay? We want to be really rooted and grounded in the truth and in reality. And I think something that we hear with the word abundance and just abundant mindset is immediately we think we're supposed to walk around pretending like everything is okay and everything is amazing and money is flowing to me and nothing is bothering me. But that really is, again, denial. And it's like, it's toxic positivity. I was here for a minute, no longer there. Um, but there's been many times in my own life when I genuinely was trying to convince myself that everything was okay when it wasn't. And there are things that I had to heal. There was beliefs that I had to look at. There was financial situations that I had to be real honest about with myself, and relationships that I had to face where I either needed to put a boundary or I needed to fully remove myself. And those ultimately were just decisions I didn't want to make because they genuinely made me so uncomfortable. But there were things that God was truly showing me about myself that didn't necessarily want to see or look at. And for me, it was probably coming back again to the relationship where I was in a short term marriage and I wanted to believe that everything could work out. I tried to convince myself that it was going to because there was children involved. But when I really stepped back and looked at it, I was like, their love is not enough to make this work. And there is love here, but there isn't a solid foundation. There isn't a foundation built on God. We had different core values. We wanted different things in life. We really butted heads in many places where we just could not harmonize. And ultimately, it's because he wasn't my twin flame. But I really wanted to make it work because our families told us that we needed to make it work. And ultimately society tells us, and you want to make it work for the children. And so I tried to stay positive. I would go to family events with a smile on my face, acting like everything was good and dandy, when really we couldn't stand each other at one point. And really, that was me abandoning myself in order to try to stay positive about the situation. And I really think that that's where people misunderstand mindset work. An abundant mindset doesn't say there isn't a problem. It says the problem doesn't get to decide who I am or where my life goes from here. And those are completely two different things. You can cry. You can get angry. You can get disappointed. You can admit that something hurts. You have to be able to validate yourself in that space. It's important that you validate your feelings, because if not, you're going to look to everyone else for validation, and that's not where you get your validation. You get your validation from God, and you get your validation from within. And you can go to God and say, God, I don't understand this. And that's okay. You can spend time processing your feelings there, but eventually there is another question that you have to ask yourself after that, and that is going to be, what are you going to do now? Are you going to sit in this energy? Are you going to sit in this problem and let it just consume you? Or are you going to be the change that you're hoping to see in your reality? And the moment that you realize you have a choice, I personally could look back at different areas of my life and see moments where things really began to change when I began to change and question my reality. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? I started saying, okay, what is this showing me? What are the lessons coming from this? What are my beliefs that I'm holding on to that's creating this experience? What is under my table? Sorry, I'm like, I keep kicking something here. It's my diamond pin. All right. And I really had to ask myself, like, what is within my control? And what is in your control is how you respond to things, how you react to things. Instead of, why don't I have my desire? Ask yourself, how am I showing up today for what I desire? How am I moving forward towards it? What actions am I taking? And some of these questions are uncomfortable. Okay. Like, they're uncomfortable because they require you to look at yourself. They require you to change, and it requires you to stop complaining. And the reason why we want to do that is because when I really looked at complaining and just the action of it, I realized complaining doesn't require much from us other than just complaining and being in a bad mood. But taking responsibility, taking full responsibility of your reality, now that requires a whole level of maturity. And for me, when I realized waiting for someone or something outside of me to change, whether it was my financial situation or a relationship, I spent many years at one point waiting for someone to change, waiting for someone to choose me, waiting for someone to see me clearly. And that was one of my biggest regrets, was waiting for someone instead of like really giving to myself. And once I made a core choice to stop waiting for someone or waiting for something to change, and I really just poured that love and that devotion and that attention into myself. And I looked at those parts of me who were really just waiting for me to acknowledge me. That is when I moved out of that stuck energy and I started taking responsibility. And that doesn't mean that you take responsibility for the things that have happened to you, because those are not your fault. You want to take responsibility for how you respond and react to it. Those are two completely different things. So, if, like, for instance, if someone cheats on you, that is not your fault. Okay, that is their choice. That is their complete decision. That is not your fault. But what is your responsibility is how you respond and react after that, how you take care of yourself after that. And that is really important because there are things that other people do that are out of our control. And they're ultimately disappointments that we never asked for. But in tremendous truth, we have incredible power in realizing that I still get to choose what I do from here. And that means I can move on and learn from it and become better and allow it to mold me into the person God needs me to be. Or I can let it break me and I can dissolve into this nothingness. Okay. So know that you have the choice to choose an abundant mindset, choose life, choose joy, choose love, or choose to stay in the feelings that these situations bring up for you. And ultimately, how this showed up for me on my own journey was really how I learned a lot of this. And it reminds me that your twin flame journey, again, is here to help you evolve into the best version of yourself and to redirect you back to God. It's not just about having a romantic relationship with your twin flame. That is part of the process, but that's not the end game. It's not the whole sole purpose of it. Because this is one area where it can become incredibly easy to just live in circumstances when it comes to your twin flame journey. And that's going to look like, what are they doing? Why haven't they called me? Why haven't they changed? They don't want to be in a relationship with me. Why aren't they choosing me? Why aren't they choosing this? When is something finally going to happen? I hear that a lot from my clients. And when you're consistently looking outside of yourself, that puts you in a space of feeling completely powerless. And because you're really saying, my peace depends on another person's behavior, and your happiness depends on another person's behavior, and your belief in your union depends on what you're seeing today. And one of the biggest shifts for me was learning to bring my focus back on me. I've said this a few times within my videos, specifically for the divine feminines, because I spend a lot of time coaching divine feminines. I do coach divine masculines. I have many clients who are divine masculines, but I see this pattern occur a lot within my divine feminines, which is, if I put all of my attention on me, he's going to forget about me. He's going to find someone else, and I'm not going to get what I want. And I can tell you that is the biggest lie. Okay. For all of the divine feminines that I have coached who have taken this to heart, for what I share with them is that if you put all of your love and attention, validation, reassurance onto you and your relationship with God, you're just going to attract your masculine to you. Because there's nothing more attractive than, and this goes for the divine masculines too, but there's nothing more attractive than a person who's very secure within themselves, who know who they are, who are doing their thing, who are showing up from a place of love, and who really is just ultimately being a badass. Like, there's nothing more attractive than that when you can show up as your true, authentic, divine version of yourself. And when you're so heavily focused on your twin flames actions and circumstances of what's happening within your union, and what changed when you started looking at your own choices and beliefs and your healing and your relationship with God, there's such a contrast between the two. When I was really focused on my twin flame, and he would sometimes go weeks without talking to me, and then he would like come back and I would feel better. And then I got to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to feel great whether or not he's talking to me. And then he just started calling me on a consistent basis. And I was like, hey, let's hang out. Let's want to go get dinner. He started inviting me on trips. Like, we really started getting to spend time together, but in a more balanced and healthy and mature way. So I want you to know that you putting your time and attention and focus on you doesn't mean that you stop caring about your twin flame. That's not what I'm saying, okay? And it doesn't mean that the circumstances are just going to suddenly disappear. It means that you stop allowing circumstances to have a final say over what you believe. And there's something that I carried within my life, was that no matter what happens between me and my twin flame, or me and someone else, is that it's never personal. And that is a hard one for people to ground, is that what people do, it's not personal. It's their own choice, and it's a reflection of the crap that they're working through within themselves. And a lot of the times they're just projecting it on you. And so, again, it's not personal. I really hope you can hear and receive me when I say that. So, one of the last things I want to talk on, because this video went much longer than I wanted it to, and that is that I want you to start noticing how often you are looking at what's wrong instead of looking at the possibilities of what you can receive and learn from something. And I want you to think about this in this way. Have you ever had 10 things go right in one day? And then the one thing goes wrong. You have all these beautiful things that go right, and then you have one thing that goes wrong. And somehow the one thing becomes the story of your entire day. And I see it all the time when you're like, hey, how's it going? How's everything going? And people are just like, oh, everything's good, good, but, and then they tell you what the thing is. And I find that it's because that's really where their consciousness is focused on. Someone gives you 5 compliments and 1 criticism, and you're going to think all night about the one negative thing that they said. And it's important that you really focus on the beautiful things that are the abundance. Like, you have the 5 compliments, that's the abundance, that you're focused on the one thing, which is lack. And when I started realizing how easy it was to train my mind to look for what was missing, and that's when the whole idea that abundance was actually a choice and a mindset, that is when I started to catch it. I was very aware, oh, I'm thinking about the negative thing, and I need to shift from that. So, what is this negative thing bringing up in me? What is the belief that I'm holding on to, that I'm attaching to this negative belief? And when I was able to do the inner work and then shift that, that is when abundance really started coming in, and I was able to see the abundance in my life. And I really had to focus on all of the love that was already there. And I think that was one of the biggest things that shifted in my journey, was I was very focused on where I wasn't receiving love from my twin flame. And when I stopped focusing on that, I started to see where I was receiving so much love in other areas, especially from my children. And I was able to fully receive them. And I was able to see where God was really loving me through all of these opportunities of love and being supported and being received and understood. And it really allowed me to focus more on the abundance mindset. So, what are you training yourself to see? And that brings me back to just the children. Like, little by little, something starts happening, and you stop immediately focusing on the problem. And that's what we want to teach our kids. And that's what we want to teach ourselves. And when we do that, we're going to have generations of abundant mindset people just walking through this earth. Okay. So I hope that this video was very helpful for you. Remember that you're human. The point is not perfection. The point is just becoming aware of when we're complaining, and turn that into an abundant mindset and a learning opportunity. And you have the power to make the next move in a direction that you want your life to go in. And know that the change starts within. It's not the circumstance or the person changing, it is you changing. And you can ask God for help. You can ask God for the support that you need. You can ask God for the love that you need. And that's really going to help you shift very quickly when you put your focus on love, on God, on taking care of yourself, on supporting yourself. And that way, you're pouring into other people's cup from a filled cup. So, thank you guys for staying all the way through with me. I love you guys. Peace, love, and faith. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share this video, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye.